that they are not building for themselves, and that when they build a building, it is not one building they are building. They are actually affecting the entire architecture, they are affecting the entire society.
I will introduce Apurva. Apurva is an Indian author, award-winning architectural journalist who initiated the architectural journalism in India in 2013 under the Indian Institute of Architects. Her first authored book, which is this book, Architecture Voices of India. So this is the first one.
First author.
First author.
Otherwise, I've edited other books, but this is my first author book.
Okay. I try to read the book in a very fast because it's just 5 minutes. This book consists of several quite a deep of interview, and then have a conclusion at the end about the keresahan itu apa ya?
Anxiety.
Apa? Anxiety, and then you have the enlightenment at the end actually for because India and Indonesia probably we have like a similarity. We're trying to find an answer for what kind of problem that these 17 masters has. I call the master because they have produced quite a body of work, like a Christopher Bannister and then Doshi and then Sanjay Puri and many of them. Probably we don't know all of them, but we can after this we can try to understand what's happened in India. The situation is quite same in Indonesia because we have models of the system, what's happening, and then there is like a tradition from here we got the Dutch tradition coming to the local tradition, and we try to have like a new traditions, and then at the end you called like a missionary. I think it's quite interesting. Dengan tidak menunggu lagi, mungkin langsung aja gitu ya. Kita langsung. I introduce some of the people here, like a very young architect. We've got like curator of the Jakarta Architecture Trinale, Mas Cahyo, Mas Jo, Mas Anas, and Mas Carlson. Ada Yuki juga, and many young talented architect. I think you can just have an introduction for 25 to 30 minutes, and we're gonna have it like recorded, and then we're gonna edit it if you feel unhappy, and then we can just, this is part of our Omah library, and then at the end we're gonna have like a testimonial for you.
Oh, okay.
It's like a give and take. You will give something to them, and they will give something to you as a testimonial, as their experience with you in these lectures. So after 30 minutes, and we're gonna have like a Q&A. Okay, please, Apurva.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Rich, for having me here. Okay, let me begin by saying, apologizing, I don't know Bahasa, so I will be speaking in English, and but I'm happy to have Rich to interpret anything that is not understood by all of you. So let me thank you for giving me this wonderful opportunity to interact with all of you. Whenever I visit any country, one of the first things that I research on is to see the libraries that the country has, which house architectural books. Because even when everything is going digital today, I am someone who believes in the power of the print media. So when I was researching on the libraries in Jakarta, I came across this very special library called OMA, which was established by an architect, which allows these kind of interactions, and which has a huge collection, I was told, of 1,500 architectural books. So that is something very exciting. And so when Real Rich, extended this invitation for me to present my first book, Architectural Voices of India, I was very happy to accept it. So let me begin with a small introduction of mine, and let me correct a bit about what you said. I didn't introduce architectural journalism in 2013. That is one rectification that I wanted to tell you. But, okay, let me tell you where I belong to. I presently stay in South India in a metropolitan city called Bangalore. I'm not sure if anyone of you have heard about it. It's one of the fastest growing cities in the world. But I was born and brought up in a city called Chandigarh. I think for architectural people, Chandigarh is like, one huge case study which was done by Corbusier. So in my final year of architecture in 2005, I had this subject called architectural journalism, which I took up. Writing had always been a hobby, and I took up architectural journalism as an elective. And after I graduated with my B.Arch degree, I started working with Architecture Plus Design magazine in India. It was one of the 2 magazines on architecture that was available in India way back in 2005. I am not too sure about the status of architectural writing in Indonesia. Do you have lots of it in architectural writing, architectural journalism?
Yes. We're starting to have it.
Okay, that's great. So because when I graduated in 2005, there was no architect in India who had ever taken up architectural journalism as a full-time profession. So I took it up, and in the past 12 or 13 years of my career, I have worked with architectural magazines, I have worked with media houses, architectural firms and organizations, writing for them, curating for them, critiquing for them, writing about architecture. Apart from this, one of the very important things that I have been doing is to increase the visibility of architectural writing in India. I hold a lot of workshops, I do a lot of talks in the architectural community, in front of architectural students, in front of architectural institutions, to make them realize the importance of architectural writing to architecture. And you would be very happy to know that today there are around 30 to 40 colleges in India which are offering architectural journalism as an elective, and there are around 40 magazines in India which write on architecture and design. I was reading about the activities of OMA, and I saw that there was a workshop which was held on design writing a few months back. So that is also something which, really excites me. So that, in a nutshell, has been my journey of my 12 or 13 years of career. And I could say that the learning from this entire journey has culminated into my first authored book, Architectural Voices of India, that was launched in 2017 end. And this is also the reason why I am here in front of all of you today. So let me begin with telling you why I thought about writing a book like Architectural Voices of India. So let me give you an example from OMA. You have 1,500 books on architecture, but there are very few books on Indian architects. One on V.V. Doshi, one on Christopher Benninger, many on Laurie Baker, and one on Vijay Jain. Why do you think there's so less books on architecture? Why you don't have them?
It's very difficult to find any.
Great. That is the answer that I was looking for.
Amazon offer all of the books Indian architects that we have.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't blame Amazon. I blame the fact that there are no books on Indian architects. So, there haven't been many books on Indian architects. I met this very well-known architecture critic from the US once, and she told me that Indian architects are the world's best kept secrets. And why does that happen? Because architects in India do not write. They do not write about their own designs. They do not write about architecture and design. That's one of the main reasons why I have been trying to promote the subject of architecture writing in India. Because globally, you have a lot of architects, who write about their works, who write about architecture and design. There has been a Frank Gehry, there has been Corbusier, you now have Rem Koolhaas. You also write a lot on architecture and design. So, but in India, we really don't have architects who are writing about it. And thirdly, the few books that you have on Indian architects, it's basically on their projects. There are no books which talk about their journeys, which talk about their philosophies, which talk about how they feel about architecture and design as a profession. So these were all my thoughts which led me to write a book like Architectural Voices of India. I wanted a platform where all these architects could come together, they could share their journeys, they could share what they thought about architecture and design. I hope you are all understanding my English, or do you want anything to be translated? If anything needs to be translated, I think maybe you should just raise a hand, otherwise I'll not get to know.
Okay. They understand it.
They are understanding it. That's wonderful. So let me begin with a few slides on what my book is about. So my book has 19 Indian architects, and they are from 17 architectural firms. And the book has 17 chapters. Each chapter is dedicated to one architectural firm. And when I was selecting these architects, I made an effort to select architects across different age groups, different specialization, different philosophies and different journeys. Because, I think this diversity of architects is very important if you want to know the diversity in architecture. And I can very proudly say that the strength of Indian architecture is in its diversity. So because I spoke about age groups, you can see we have around 3 generations, and I have covered around 6 decades of work in this book. So the diversity of architects in this book is a lot. So as I said, there are 17 chapters in this book. So there is a certain structure to all these chapters. So each chapter, it starts with the profile of the architect, which talks about the journey of the architect. And then it is followed by one-to-one interviews with these architects. And these interviews are very, very elaborate ones, where before interviewing the architects, there was a lot of research and a lot of homework that I had to do before going and speaking to these architects. I wanted a certain structure which would bind all these architects together. So what I did was that though the questions that are posed to all these architects are based on their experience and expertise, but the subheads that are followed in all the chapters for these questions are the same. So, you have subheads like career paths and journeys, architecture in India, global architecture, architectural education, architecture in changing times, building with emotions, the way forward. There are 2 more sections in each of the chapters that have been penned by the architect themselves. One is on their personal and office life, and the second is on a project that is like a favorite of theirs. So let me now come to the architects who are part of this book. As Rilrich mentioned that you might not be knowing all these architects, so let us check whom you all know. Okay, let's check that. Okay, so this first gentleman is architect Christopher Benenja. So I believe you have his book Letters to the Young Architect on here. This is architect Ravindra Bhan, who is the pioneer of landscape architecture in India. This is architect Hafiz Contractor. How many of you have heard about it? Okay, the reason I emphasize here is that by far he is the most famous architect in India. When I say famous, it is because, when we talk about the public wanting to know about architecture, if I have to go and ask a common man in India, can you name one architect? Most probably, the first name or the only name will be Hafiz Dutta. This is someone you all must be know. Who's that? Yes, so B.V. Doshi, who just made India so much more prouder this year by winning the Princeton Laureate. So he's a part of this book, and I believe you have another wonderful book on him here in the library. Then this is architect Karan Grover. He earned the title of the greenest architect in the world in 1997 or 1998. Here's another architect who is known for his tropical architecture, architect Sandeep Khosla. Then let me just run through a few of these architects. Let me come to this lady, Paru Zaveri and Nimish Patel. They run a firm called Abhikram in Ahmedabad. Ahmedabad is again one of the architectural marvels of India, and they are actually called the sustainable champions of Indian architecture. This is Sanjay Puri, a very well-known architect internationally. I think he has set some record of winning the highest number of awards in the World Architecture Awards. And that also brings me to congratulate you, because I read that one of your projects is there as a finalist in the World Architecture Awards this year. Okay, so coming to the rest of the architects, let me talk about Sonali Rastogi and Manik Rastogi. They own a firm called Morphogenesis, which is actually creating ripples in the international arena of architecture. They have a 2-decade-old firm, and they're quite famous internationally. Raj Rawal, I am not sure how many of you would be knowing him. There are a few architects, B.V. Doshi and Raj Rawal, who are credited with having given identity to a post-independence kind of architecture. So, they have been building from that time. They are like the senior-most generation. Then let me come to this gentleman called architect Shivdat Sharma, who was a part of Le Corbusier's team when they created Chandika. This is architect Brinda Somaya, who is a very famous conservation architect of India. The text that you read here, the text in red is the chapter titles that I have given, and the text in purple are their names. And the chapter titles are actually representative of the philosophy, of the theories of the architects. So if you see, there has been a lot of thought behind the titles of the chapters too. So let me tell you, my most interesting, fascinating part of all these conversations with these architects was the fact that they were brutally honest. They didn't hesitate in saying anything, to the extent that they said that it is time for the architectural community to stand up and take their responsibilities. Because these are all diverse people from diverse age group, diverse specializations, you will see that there is a lot of difference of opinions. But at the same time, there is also a lot of similarity. And I can say one thread that continues through all of them is the passion to build, passion to make architecture into a profession that can, affect the way society develops. So as I said, these people have been, kind of brutally honest with what they had said. And I'm not going to be reading out all the quotes. For that, you must read the book. But some hard-hitting quotes. And let me begin with our Princeton laureate, B.V. Doshi. This is when he talks about the profession of architecture in India. He says, policy makers are concerned only about development. The profession of architecture is not a culturally or socially active one. We can't always be only criticizing the governments or policies makers' initiatives. Another very famous architect who is known for sustainable designs from South India is Sanjay Mohe, who talks about when every city is unique in its own way and should evolve in a way which preserves that uniqueness, Our role model cannot be Shanghai or Hong Kong, or else every city in the world would begin to look the same. Now, that is something that I am sure we all agree with. There are so many discussions about the identity of architecture of a city, of a country. If you really look at it, all cities today, all metropolitan cities today, they are actually trying to look the same. They are trying to A, B, or C cities. So that's what he says, that, if we want our own identities, a Shanghai or say a Dubai or a Hong Kong, we cannot be accepting them as our own models. Then there is Hafiz Contractor, who talks about the importance of media in architecture. As I told you, the media really does not write about the technical aspect of architecture in India. So this is what he says about it. It is going to take a long time for us to be recognized globally. To get global recognition, it is not enough to do a good job. One also needs the media to play its part in showcasing it. Sadly, our media is not doing that. More hard-hitting quotes from the sustainability champions Parv Zaveri and Nimish Patel. They raise a very important question, saying that, today we don't know who our role models are going to be. Can it be someone like Corbusier? Can it be Zaha Hadid? Can it be someone like Frank Gehry? Or can it be the unknown sthapatis and craftsmen who designed most of India's built environment? When they say unknown sthapatis, they mean unknown architects, because there were a lot of architects in India, who just designed the buildings and we never got to know about it. For example, have you all heard about Taj Mahal?
Yep.
So Taj Mahal is like one of the iconic monuments of India. But even today, most of us don't know who built it. So those are the unknown kind of architects whom, these Parv Zaveri and Nimish Patel ask. Or, these are the people whom we should be taking as our inspiration. Karan Johar, as I said, he's the greenest. Karan Johar, as I said, he's the greenest architect in the world. He says, which I think you all might agree with and feel happy about also. He says that a larger number of experiments is coming from Asia, and whatever is happening in this part of the world and not in the West. So, like this, the book is full of such honest confession, honest thoughts which will make you think, which will make you want to analyze why they have said it, and which will make you want to act. So these are some of the pages from the book. As an architectural writer who has been working with architectural magazines, who has been working with books all along, I have always believed that a book or a magazine should be a great combination between text, between architectural drawings, and between images. So you have a lot of images of the projects, you have a lot of drawings of the architect's projects. Besides that, you also have a lot of handmade sketches which the architects have drawn themselves. And finally, as I said, there is a special section where the architects talk about their personal spaces. And I think this is very important because it helps us to connect with the architect in a more deep manner, because we realize that at the end of the day, the architects will live a life as we do. So as I said, this book is all about learning and analyzing what the architects have said, understanding their viewpoints, and trying to understand what is the next step we should all be doing. So there is a very important chapter which Real Rich was also mentioning. It's the last chapter of the book, called Reflections and Realization, where I analyze and where I kind of summarize all the views and the thoughts that the architects have said, besides which I add my own views and thoughts also. And these are some of the topics under which I talk about the views. I speak about journeys over destinations, where I mean destinations are never important. It is the journeys which are really important. Then there is talk about Indian architecture, Indian cities, global inspirations, architectural education, moving with the times and what lies ahead, role of architects in changing times. So if I have to talk about the learnings on a personal level that I have gained from the book, I would say that firstly, I got to know that humility is the biggest virtue. This I say because all the architects who are a part of this book, even after being so successful in their lives and their professions, they have held on to their roots. They are still as humble as before, and maybe that is something which really makes them successful too. The second is power of belief. All these architects in the book, and many architects who are also not a part of this book, have had very, very challenging journeys. But they had the belief in themselves, the belief in what they wanted to do, in how they wanted to contribute to architecture. So that makes me believe in the power of believing in yourself. And finally, this book also taught me the importance of diversity of thoughts. As I said, there are different architects from different generations. They have different diverse thoughts. It makes me understand that we all can have diverse journeys. You're from Indonesia, I'm from India. We can have different journeys. We can have different views, we can have different perspectives. But if our goal and aim, when we speak about architecture, is the same, then it really doesn't matter. That if we are all working towards one goal and one aim, that is what really matters. So I now have an animation on the book, which will pretty much sum up what I have said, now about the journey of the book. And it's a 6 minutes long video, but I hope you all enjoy it.
I am architect Apurva Bose Dutta, an architectural journalist from Bangalore. Over the next couple of minutes, my digital avatar will take you on the journey of my first authored book, Architectural Voices of India. The 12 years of my exciting journey in architectural journalism have given me an opportunity to interact with different groups of people, including students and professionals from the architecture, design and building industry, and media houses. During these interactions, I have come across varied views, queries, all which have left me pondering and asking myself questions. Can there be something which can act as a resource book for architecture students, which talks about the journeys of some of India's leading architects and can inspire these students and help them understand the field? Wow! All these architects from the industry have so many diverse views on architecture, its challenges, its scopes, and its future. How interesting will it be to have something where we can celebrate the spirit of these architects and collate these diverse views to make a great resource on architecture in India? Everyone always writes about the built environment. Why doesn't anyone write about the creators and their theories, visions, and philosophies? Architecture is such an integral part of building a nation, which means it needs citizen participation in its processes. How can the common man get to know how an architect thinks and what he feels about the multiple issues that a nation is facing today? Can I write a book which brings many architects from different age groups, philosophies, specializations on one platform where they can talk about their journeys as well as talk on the profession and subject of architecture and planning? And those thoughts led to the genesis of my first authored book, Architectural Voices of India, a blend of contemporary and traditional ethos, which was launched in September of 2017. The essence of Indian society was dialogue. My book will take this ahead, will focus on the responsibility of architectural conversations. It will reflect the importance of an architectural journalist in handling these conversations, and it will give a framework in which architecture as a subject and a profession can be discussed. The book has 19 illustrious Indian architects from diverse age groups, specializations, and philosophy. The 17th chapter dedicated to these architects follow a similar framework, which is a comprehensive profile of the architect, one-to-one conversations on diverse topics, personal and office spaces, and a symbolic project for the architect. This book is relevant for different sections in society. The architectural journeys and thoughts of these architects portray what it takes to pursue a field like architecture and be successful in it. Interesting anecdotes and revelations by the architects. The project images, technical drawings, and handmade sketches in the book help in understanding the intricacies of designing. The voices present the architecture evolution of India. Don't miss the last chapter, Reflections and Realizations, my summary and analysis of all the views of the architects in the book. The plurality of thoughts across the generations encourage critical thinking and convey how architecture has changed with the times. Discussions around topics including architectural education, sustainability and the green revolution, challenges and advantages of architects in India, what India can learn from its neighboring countries, importance of technology in architecture, role of architects in the building of a nation, importance of integration of architecture and urban planning, etc. Also feature in this book. As a citizen, you are also an architect, as you have helped in building this city. Your suggestions for architects, planners and designers, and the reimagination of roles is valuable. It is thus important for you to understand and be aware of their theories, dreams, projects, ideas, and visions. My book will help in understanding these. The book has been launched at a number of architecture and academic platforms. The book has been featured and reviewed in national and international dailies, architectural and design magazines, and portals including World Architecture, Arc News Now, Architimes, Architecture Plus Design, Architecture Plus Interiors, and Architecture Live. The book has been reviewed by leading architects, academicians of the country. The book has been published by Cambridge Scholars Publishing. For more information on the book and to buy it, visit my webpage at apurvabose.com/book. To connect with me, visit apurvabose.com or write to apurvabose@yahoo.com. I hope you will enjoy reading the book as much as I enjoyed writing it.
Okay, so that was the animation on describing the journey of my book. When I was reading the website of OMA, I realized that one of its main aims is to create these kind of dialogues, create these kind of discussions. I believe my book, Architectural Voices of India, is a step towards getting architects together through the medium of dialogues, which can then further lead to discussions. And I believe that as an architectural journalist, as an architectural writer, it is my responsibility, because architectural journalism is a profession that bridges the gap between people, architects, and built environment. I have always felt that the connection between a library and a writer or an author is very, very sacred. And so that is why to be sitting here in this library, in this beautiful setting with all of you, discussing about the book is indeed very, very special. So let me end here by saying the only two words that I have learned in Bahasa, that is terima kasih.
Okay. I cannot say anything, but you have to benchmark. Some of us, they like to do writing in architecture, and to know this complexity of the motifs, and then the resultant is the dialogue, and then the conclusion, and the images, the sketches, and all of that combined together in 17 parameters is very complex. So I mean, to have this kind of conclusion in a one line, timeline, and a framework, I think I learned so much. So I think that's one of the blessings to us today. So I will open this discussion in the first of 3 questions, probably only 2 or 3 sessions, probably like a 6 to 9 questions.
Anything.
Yeah. Anyone? Bahasa nggak apa-apa kok, nanti saya coba ini santai aja, ini lebih kayak acara rumah biasa.
What is important is whether they have understood what I have said.
They just be shy.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to say that it's like a common Oma.
Okay.
Okay. Kalian mau nanya? Tidak. 1.
You have a question?
2 tak? 3.
Okay.
1 lagi. Bangkit. Okay. First question. Nida. Mungkin ada kencang aja ya.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your book to us, and this is a great opportunity to us for.
Can you please be a bit louder and hardly able to hear you?
Okay. This is a great opportunity for us to learn from your book, something like that. I know the process to begin, and in the process to write the book is a long process, and the biggest question from me is what is the biggest obstacle when you're writing in the book, and is it from the compiling the data, the interview, or is it from the writing itself? You what is that? Expressing the interview into words, or in another matter, or something like that. So that's the biggest obstacle.
Okay.
Okay.
Should I answer?
No, later. Just
Or
combine
later?
the 3
I hope
questions.
I don't forget the.
I will remind you.
Okay.
I'll write it. Tirta?
From your conversations with those 19 architects, you in your presentation you emphasizes on their diverse view on their own manifestation of architecture. During your process, did you from those interviews, did you able to realize that what are their their similarity in their spirit of their practice in architecture, especially in India?
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
What's the next question?
I'm Bangkit. This is more like a methodical question. So here in Omagh, we are trying to write something to everyone about architecture. The question might be, I think there is some exclusivity in architectural writing. So that's always the challenge for any architectural writing. And how do you solve that? I mean, how to make people want to read something architectural? I mean, it's confusing maybe.
Okay. How do you want other architects to read your work, or you want the common man to read your work? Common man.
Both might be.
Okay, fine. So 3 questions?
The 3 questions. What's the obstacle?
Okay, no,
The significant one.
Okay, so coming first to your, thank you for asking that, because thank you for understanding that there is a lot of efforts which go behind making a book, and I think it goes more when only one author is working on it. So I can tell you that nothing is easy when you write a book. Okay, so let me just give you an example about this book, because this is a book that I've written. The architects that were a part of the book, they are some of the most busiest, most famous architects in India. You know, getting the kind of time that you require to understand their conversation, that wasn't easy. That was quite difficult. You know, and that is why, you know, the book took some amount of years, because these architects are all busy. So you have to get hold of them, and you then have to speak to them, and then you have to, you know, work on your content. That is difficult. The expression part that you said, that that is something that is maybe not that difficult. That also comes with experience, because, you know, I worked in the field for almost 10 years before, you know, I started working on this book. And 10 years is a good amount of time to develop that kind of expression, develop that kind of style when you're writing. But I must tell you that when you do these kind of interviews and you kind of transcribe them, it's not word to word. You know, you kind of get the essence of what they want to speak, and then you write it down. And then you send it back to them. That's one of the very, very important things that we as architectural writers, or we as any kind of writers, need to do, especially when we are doing interviews. Because, you know, in interviews, the thoughts are not ours. We are just kind of summarizing the thoughts. So once you have summarized their thoughts in your own words, it needs to go back to the interview and ask them that, sir or ma'am, is this okay? So that also takes a lot of time, because all these 19 architects, well, they were actually reading through what I had, you know, kind of summarized, what I had read it in my own words. So, you know, I won't call these as obstacles. I call them as challenges. And, you know, and these challenges, or maybe just opportunities to understand your limits, you know, to what extent you can work, to what extent you can do. And yes, I think you all know that the publishing industry is a tough one all over the world. I'm happy that Oman is publishing books. Otherwise, the industry is a tough one. To get through a publisher is not easy. I was very, very clear that I didn't want to go in for a self-publication. I hope you all know what is self-publication, what is traditional publishing. You know that?
If you explain a bit more.
Yeah, so self-publication is basically you are investing money from your side to the publisher, and he is publishing it for you. But you are investing money from your side. With traditional publishing, you are not investing any money from your side. You are just giving them the manuscript and everything, and then they are doing the marketing. So today, if you see in this entire world, self-publishing has, you know, there's a lot of self-publishing happens, and that is the reason we have so many books today, because people just have to invest in money, and, you know, the book comes out. I was very clear that I didn't want to get into self-publishing, right? And traditional publishing is not easy, and especially in India, it is not easy. You know, I am quite lucky. I'm quite blessed that the publishers that I got, they are Cambridge scholars from UK, and you know, they are into these academic books. My book had a great academic inclinations, and they really liked the manuscript, and, you know, they went ahead with it. So these are the kind of, you know, challenges, and there were smaller challenges also. For example, you see there are 19 architects in this book, but in India we have 60,000 architects, right? To narrow down that which are the architects you want to talk about, you know, that is also very difficult. And that also has constraints. You know, you have the constraint of space. You can't be talking about 40 architects in one book. You don't really, you know, if you have to really talk about the core values of these architects, it has to be a limited number of architects. So narrowing down which architects, you know, you are going to be talking about this book, that was also a challenge. So, you know, these are small challenges that happen, and over the course of 3-4 years, it's all been happening. And I must tell you, as authors, our work does not finish at authors. We today market our books also, you know, so we can't rely on publishers to market our books. You know, you all know William Curtis. He's a very well-known architectural historian. I think you have his book in your library also. You know the kind of books he has written. I interviewed him in 2016 when he had come down to Chandigarh for a conference, and it was a very elaborate interview. It spilled over 2-3 hours, and he told me, he was the first person who told me that, Apurva, my work never finishes with just writing the book. Authors have to go to a lot of extent to market their own book, because a publisher has like thousands of books to market. So the author really has to go all out to market their books. So not the obstacles, but the challenges, they started a few years back. They are, they are still there. But when you get into interaction like these, and when you see people appreciate the book, I think it's all well done. So I'm happy about it. Did I answer your question?
Lagi Indah, mau dielaborasi?
No, that's everything I want to know from the interview, from the busy schedule of the architect, and from the way you point your writing in the book. I know that's not an easy one, and I like that you say that that's not an obstacle, it's a challenge. I like the terminology, so it will be not a hard one, but it will be something you achieve, something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. I've always believed that when you do your work with passion, the work never bogs you down. So if you're doing just for the heck of it, you will get tired of it, and then you say that these are obstacles. So for me, my work is kind of passion. The entire thing of architectural writing, it's fun, it's passion. So that's why I enjoy it. Okay, so coming to your second question, you said that because these architects were so diverse in their thoughts, and you said whether there was any similarity in their practices. When you say practices, did you mean architectural firms, architectural practices?
Yes.
That's what you said.
Yeah, from their, I mean, the similarity, what brought them together in their, maybe their share, did they share some similarity in their spirit of their architecture?
Yes, definitely. So, as I said, these architects were from different age groups, different specializations, and they are all doing different kinds of buildings. For example, someone is just doing residences, someone is doing these huge IT parks and everything. What was most important is that the core values of architecture, the core values of designing, they remain the same. The basic function, what is the basic requirement of a building? What are the basic aspects that you need to consider? And one important thing is that function is more important than aesthetics. So the basic spirit to build something which will affect the society, which will affect the community in a very positive way, is what all these architects, they follow. And why only these architects? Their honesty to their art, that they are not building for themselves, and that when they build a building, it is not one building they are building. They are actually affecting the entire architecture, they are affecting the entire society. So when an architect builds, he does not build for one client, he builds for an entire community. That is something that I found very, very upfront in all these architects. And what else? Yes, and I think the passion with, for them architectural is not a job, it's not an occupation. As I said, for someone it's like relaxation, for someone it's like a celebration of life, and for someone it's like something religious. So when they take architecture in that zone where they don't consider it just an occupation, then you are being true and honest to the art, and that is what you kind of find in all the architects who are featured here.
So is that their shared perspective that that you consider when you are curating this 19 architect, or is there any consideration for you to select how did you select these 19 architects?
Okay. So obviously, there are a lot of architects who are maybe not a part of the book, and a lot of people have told me that, because as I said, it is difficult to have so many architects in one book. So a lot of people have told me, and that there should be a series of this book which I'm going to be thinking about. So right now my selection of architects was, one, I wanted different age groups, right? One thing that was common was that all these architects have really contributed to Indian architecture in some way, and they have made Indian architecture rise in the world architecture. That is one thing that was common. The other deciding factors was, like I said, I wanted a certain age group. So I have an architect who is 45. I also have an architect who is 90. Then I wanted architects from different locations in India. So there are architects from north, south, east, and west. Because when we talk about architecture, when we talk about design, the most important thing we do is about the context of building. And when these people are in different geographical locations, the context changes. So that is how you get the diversity. So that is something that I wanted, different geographical locations. Then, as I said, there are many architects who come with different philosophies. One would be very blunt. He would like to stick to only traditional architect, whereas there will be a second architect who will only work on contemporary architecture. There will be a third architect who will take what he can learn from the traditional architecture, come and combine into contemporary architecture. So different kind of architects who come with different philosophies, different theories, they were also included in this, book. And then, as I said, we have architects who build different kind of buildings. Some build just residences, some build huge projects, some build very small projects, some specialize in institutional projects, some specialize in religious projects. So the entire thing was to have these different kind of architects together, so that you can have all these kind of different kind of thoughts. So that was my criteria of selection. But yes, as I said, the one common thing that's similar in all of them is that the way they have contributed to Indian architecture, they have really left a stamp on Indian architecture that which we are going to be taking ahead. So that is how I went about. And okay, so the third question I kind of forgot.
The exclusivity in the architectural writing, how you can deliver your message.
Okay. So as I said, that I have always believed, and it is also something that I've always been saying, that architectural writing should be a medium between the architects, between the built environment, and between the people. Okay, before I answer a question, do you have newspapers here in Indonesia which talk about architecture and design? Meaning a column on architecture and design or something?
We used to have it in Jakarta Post.
Okay, but it's not there.
But I think it's not there anymore.
Okay.
I think but I need to masih ada nih. Koran ada, Kompas ada. Advertorial. Advertorial masih ada tentang arsitektur ada. Masih ada kan. Oh, it's often.
Okay. So, but in India, what is happening is, see, newspapers, because you spoke about the public and the common man, newspapers are the medium from which common man and the public get most of the information. But at least in India, there are no writings on architecture and design as you will find in the US. Their architecture and design is a daily topic every day in the newspaper. There will be something on cities, there will be something on architecture. So, as I said, our main responsibility is to bridge this gap. And how to make it appeal to the common man? First, I think the subject of architectural writing needs to be given importance in all quarters, in the newspapers, in the architectural institutions, in the architects. Till the time that kind of writing is not given importance, it will really not feature anywhere. Secondly, it is very important for an architect who has a background in architecture to write about architectural writing. right? Because a layman will write about architecture, I don't think he will be able to understand the nuances which are there in architecture. Thirdly, which I think is very, very important, is that when we write, we should keep our writing very simple. You know, use of flowery language, use of language which, people really don't understand, is a short way of pushing people to not read about architecture and design. Architecture and design, it might be a very technical topic, but it is something which is a part of our everyday life. So when as a writer, you are writing for the common man or for the public, it is very important to have simple language and be able to convey what you want to do in that simple language. So that is what I think needs to be done. But as I said, most important is architectural writers, architectural journalism, architectural critique should be given a lot of importance first by the architects. Once the architects, they embrace the subject, then it will also come down to the media houses, and through the media houses it will reach the common man. This is fine.
Yes, thank you very much.
Just continue to the second session. Satu masih kosong. Ada lagi? Jangan terlalu malu. Udah? Tadi enggak. Oke, Jason, 2. Ada satu lagi? Oke, Mas Anas. Silakan dari Mas Carlson.
Thank you very much for sharing with us your journey, your passion, your works. It means a lot for me, for us. I heard some master of architects said that to understand the design, the intents of the design, you have to experience it. So I just wondering, did you visit all the works of the 19 architects, or you just summarizing from the interview?
Okay, so you mean the architects whom I've written about, have I just gone on what they are saying, or no? So as I said, the criteria behind the selection of the architects was that the architects had done different kind of work and how. So there is a lot of research. These, on the face of it, they look like interviews. But in interviews, to have questions which will elicit answers from the architects, you have to know a lot about the architects. And that's not only about their projects. Projects is just one thing. You are supposed to know about their projects. You are supposed to see their projects. You are supposed to read about their projects. So you understand what they're building. But apart from that, you need to know about their theories, their philosophies. You need to connect whether the theories and philosophies are actually going into their projects. You need to know how did they get into architecture, what was their entire journey. So when you do a book like this, you study their projects, you study their philosophies, you study their backgrounds, you study their views and thoughts. For example, if I ask an architect about one particular issue, for example, if I ask an architect, maybe I asked architect B.V. Doshi a topic, a question on conservation and restoration. The question came about because he had built a building 50 years back, which is much in the news because there are now alterations being done to it without his prior permission. So you need to know what is happening presently with their buildings, with their theories, to be able to connect and frame that kind of questions. So these questions are not like a questionnaire, you can't do 1, 2, 3. So you need to know them inside and out. And let me tell you, this like book, when I started it, it's taken like 3-4 years
Okay.
right, for me to finish the book. In those 3-4 years, it was not that before I started the book, I just did an entire research, I studied about them. I think at the end of the 3rd year, I again did all that. Because, I felt maybe there is something new that is cropped up that needs to be, questioned. So there were a lot of projects, that I studied also. I went and studied, and in any case, as I said, I've had an experience of 10 years in the field. So on my own also, I have studied a lot of projects in India, outside India. I studied a lot of design and architecture. So that's why I said this is kind of a culmination or a learning of all that I've done in my 10 years.
And elaborate.
Thank you for your explanation. So I'm sure that your work is now I'm quite sure that you visited all the architect project, and maybe you find the discrepancies between the explanation from the architects and the reality. So I think I need to know this book more.
No, what I'm doing in India with this. So there are a lot of things that the architects have said in the interviews. In the interviews, a lot of things that the architects have said, and they have said, "I have listened, but now is the time when the book is out there, when the book has been read by everyone. Now is the time to question them about what and why have they said." So I am having these kind of panel discussions back in India, in different cities, where there are these panels of 3-4 architects, and they are talking about some of the things that they have said about the book. So this book was not supposed to be a book which is read by everyone and it's kept there. No, it was supposed to incorporate discussions, give rise to discussions. So when you read the book, there are so many things that come to your mind. So I wanted the book as a way to initiate important discussions on architecture. So that is what I had one in Bangalore where I stay. So 3 of the architects who were there, they came for this panel discussion, and it's very exciting because now is the time for me to sit and ask them that. So when you speak about discrepancy, so that is how I'm taking it forward.
Okay. The question from Mas Carlson is about the stance of your book, actually.
About
the stance, the position of your book.
Position. What would that mean?
I experienced it like 2 years back when I have my librarian wrote about the topic of, for example, Sana. When people ask about, did your librarian ever go to Sana's building? I said no. So understanding something in the form of dialogue. It's not about have you ever been visited? That's one layers. The multiple layers is about the theoretical as well. It's about the big background check. It's about the history. It's all about the future projection. It's all about the whatever complexity.
Exactly.
It's very interesting to see this kind of projection of questions and how you answer it.
And I must tell you, when you go to these architects, you must have gone thinking, okay, I have done my background research, I'm going to ask them questions. But a lot of times they give these kind of answers that you on the spot think that no, I have to now ask this question. So that is, interviews might seem very, very simple. They are not simple. They're quite complex. You have to have you have to know the architect in and out to be sitting in front of him and doing a 1 or 2 hour interview. So it's very complex.
Okay, the second question dari Jason, ya, silakan.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. It's really refreshing and interesting too, especially about the part that you stated the target audience from your book is also including the architecture student, and I just interested in how the Indian students react to your published work, and how far they enthusiast and And the second is in general, and in your based on your opinion, how the future of Indian architectural publishing will it be going to which further direction, and what things that you hope from this opportunity back to the Indian architect and the architecture itself. Thank you.
One more question.
Panas
And
tadi.
this will be the last question, I think. And after that, I will. After that, if you have some word to say after that, after you answer the question, and I'll just have a conclusion. Because the time limitation.
I've actually said whatever I wanted to, so they can take the time
Sure,
and the questions
sure.
first now.
Okay. Satu lagi.
Tadi panas.
Panas, Mas Anas. Mas Anas is the author of the book of titled 19 Indonesian Young Architects.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Mas Anas. He's like the puppet master.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you, Apurva. I have two questions. What's your opinion about identity?
About?
About identity.
I didn't get you, sorry.
Identity.
Identity.
Identity. And does Indian contemporary architecture needs identity? Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. That it needs to be an academic book for architectural students. The reason being, you have all these great masters, as you said, the masters of Indian architecture. And there's a lot of learning that comes from these architects. So you would be happy to know that in India there are, I don't know if you would be happy to know, but there are like 450 architectural colleges in India. And we have this annual students meet once a year, where we have these like 6,000 or 7,000 architectural students. So in February there was this entire meet, 6,000, 7,000, and there I in fact did a launch and I did a book presentation, and the students were very, very excited about it. Because firstly, as I said, there has not been much written on these masters, and whatever has been written, it's been on their projects. So for the students, it's a lot of learning, about their journeys, about what they think about architecture, about the different aspects of architecture. So students in India, I think they have taken it very well. And I, in any case, interact with a lot of students. I've been interacting with a lot of students for the past almost 10 years when I have been talking about architectural writing and architectural journalism. So for them to know that someone who has been exposed to architectural journalism for 10 years and someone who maybe comes with knowledge of all these architects and someone who's writing about them, I think it's a big, big thing indeed. So a lot of faculty in the architectural institutions, a lot of principals, they are also, they have really appreciated the book. And somewhere I hope it can, a lot of people have also suggested that maybe it can be made into an academic book, because it's kind of you can say it's kind of a textbook, So I don't know how that works, but it's working well, and I think it's a great book for students. And I hope here also the students in the colleges enjoy the book. And okay, so you had 3 questions. What was your second question?
Only to the second. The second is what your opinion about the future of architectural publishing.
Architectural publishing in India. So in my 12-13 years of career, as I said, when I joined in 2005, people couldn't understand that why would someone after a 5-year degree would get into a field like architectural journalism. And that time there were 2 architectural magazines in India. Today there are 40 architectural magazines in India. There are 30 to 40 colleges which are offering it as an elective. Only when architectural journalism, architectural writing will become a very relevant subject, it will become a subject which is recognized by architects, architectural institutions, then will it only affect the architectural publishing industry? Because if you don't really have writers who are going to write on architecture and design, you won't have any architectural publications, right? So that is what I have been trying to do also. I have been, pushing our Council of Architecture, who are very interested in this entire theme of architectural journalism becoming the mainstream, subject in India. But we do have a number of publishers in India, but then they come out with coffee table books, and we as people in the architecture industry, I'm not sure if we are looking for coffee table books. I think the public might like coffee table books where you only have pictures, full-blown pictures of projects, and you hardly have text. But as people from the architecture community, I don't think we need kind of literature, architectural literature, because at the end of it, architects are actually philosophers. So once the subject really blooms, which it really has, you won't imagine the amount of students, amount of faculty who are interested in the subject. I keep on getting emails from students, from architectural institutions, from principals of these colleges who want to introduce the subject in their college. And I go and give these kind of talks and workshops. So once the subject comes up, I think the architecture publishing industry in India would definitely come up. As regards architecture publishing all over the world, I think there are a number of very good publishers who are getting out good architecture books. So that's just going to rise. And I somehow feel, I am a firm believer, though everyone says that the print media is diminishing, right? But if you really speak to a lot of writers and the kind of effect print media can have on you, the kind of effect these kind of books can have on you, digital media cannot. And people who are writers, who are honest writers, I can tell you, they will always pick a book to read. Because what you register when you read a book, it is much more than what you register when you're reading it, online. I was reading a very beautiful book. It's called Eat, Shoots and Leaves. It's on punctuations. So they basically said that when you are reading a book, like for example, you're reading a book, the text remains constant, and it's your eyes which flow, right? But when you are reading it on the screen, your eyes are constant and the text is flowing. So that's the kind of there is that difference. I never realized it. So, but I really think that people who are core writers, core readers, will always like to take a book. And I just hope the print media doesn't diminish. I can just hope. With technology, you don't know what is going to happen. I just hope it still stays. And you had a third question? Just two questions? Okay. So you asked me about the identity of architecture and whether contemporary Indian architecture has an identity. So this is a debate, not a debate, this is a discussion which is, I'm sure, not only happening in the Indian architectural fraternity, it is happening all over the world. Well, contemporary Indian architecture does not have an identity. And when I talk about that, I mean the 70% or the 60% of contemporary Indian architecture that you see, it will not have an identity, because like many other countries, many other cities, what we are also trying to do is we are trying to ape the West, right? But I must tell you at the same time, we have a lot of architects in the country who are doing wonderful work, who can give an identity to architecture, but they're all doing it in their small silos, like in their small niches. And people from the architectural community, people like me who write about architecture, know about these people. But it is important for this kind of architecture to happen in greater volume. Otherwise, the kind of different, innovative, novel kind of architecture that is happening in India is beautiful, which people really don't know about. But it has to happen in greater volume. And when that will happen in greater volume, that will give an identity to, Indian architecture. And, when you talk about identity, identity as a word is quite flaky. You know, we talk about identity everywhere. When we're talking about religion, we talk about identity. Everywhere we talk about identity. So I am not too sure what is the definition of that identity also. You know, because identity can become very harmful also. So I don't know, but I just feel there should be a spirit to Indian architecture. There should be a core of Indian architecture that should come up. Whether you say it's the identity of Indian architecture, I'm not too sure about it. But there is a core and there is a spirit which needs to happen in larger volume for everyone to kind of embrace it and understand, you know, that this is like the identity of Indian architecture.
Thank you.
Okay, we're coming to the end of the time.
Okay.
This is 9 o'clock already. Or more, probably. And then let me just do the conclusion or my interpretation of what's going on. Okay, we have like 6 very beautiful questions to make the dialogue deeper in a way that we can understand your book and then bring it to our interpretation about our architecture. And then the beautiful question started with by Anida, and then Tirtha and Bankin, and then continued by Carlson, and then Jason, and then ended by Mas Anas. I think the interesting part about your presentation about the positivity of what you believe. You believe in this positive side. I know the word is not black or white, but it has a motive, right? A motive to your motive is positive in a way to enrich people with your architecture journalism. So we can understand right now the starting point to get it deeper and to reflect this book in our practice. It's interesting when you said about it's the time for the architectural community to take over, and then to not to take over but to take the responsibility, which means that the architectural community, which means that probably more than two people dialoguing together, meaning from the architecture community. I think it's part of the leadership to create a better society, meaning a better architecture. I have to underline your mission, your points about the missionary, but doing a greater thing to other people. I think that's the mission of what shared value about this. What you read, this 19 great master architects from India, to have be a missionary in your own microcosmos. Yesterday we discussed about Kenny's Loki, about the importance of the microcosmos in our own world, and to have a meaning and spiritual side. And right now we have the case study, probably an example of how to understand the spirituality of the profession. That's why you saw the philosopher. And at the end, I have to, and the funny part when you said about the humility is, I don't think I have heard about the same thing from the other author. Humility is when we say we have in a lecture Oma titled Bitter and Sweet. Humility is probably the bitterness. It shapes the sweetness. When you said about humility, I think, okay, this is amazing. How can the book about the humility, and I'm just amazed about how do you make the people, the 19 architects in the book, open, brutally honest. I think it's one of the most interesting part. And you said about the power of belief. and I think this 19 architects showed about the significance of their work and their life. That's why they have a belief and they have a power.
Sure.
And the third part is the importance of diversity of thoughts, the one that's elaborated by the questions that we have now, is the diversity of thoughts. And the interesting part that might conclude the presentation today is their positivity. Their positivity concluding the importance of diversity of thought, positive thoughts. Let's make it different. Everything starts with motive. What I learned today is the motive of this very beautiful constellation of 19 architects. I don't believe I mean, if people want to have a second edition, I just answer it. It's up to you. You have your own time. Because asking that kind of question, I mean, looking at the first edition, I'm already very happy. I don't expect to have a second edition. I mean, it's up to you. But the second part is going to be very more difficult. Because
the second part is going to be with different architects. That's what I meant. So
Yes.
not with the same architect.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of expectation happen from the outside the author. You just want to protect your dream. So it's just like it's just like probably 15 years ago when you start something,
Sure.
and you create something more beautiful than ever about Indian architecture. That's what I believe happened in Indonesian architecture as well. Okay, thank you. That's concluding our session today. This book, Omar has one right now, and then you guys can read the book in the library. Can I have applause for?